Advent back to perhaps my favorite Bible story of all times. It's the one about the prodigal son who left home and went out into the world searching for something, searching for something, searching for something else. I don't suppose he knew exactly what he was searching for. He thought maybe excitement, adventure, freedom. Whatever it was that was missing, he hoped to find out there in the big, big world. Surely there is a story beneath the story. What was driving the prodigal son? What drives us to constantly seek more stuff, more excitement, more achievement? Why does the grass on the other side of the fence so often seem greener? What is this ache in the heart, this hole in the gut that we hope to fill? The intensity of our longing keeps us on the run, from one place to another, from one person to another, one toy to the next. Oh my God, what version of the iPhone are we on now? How big a fish is big enough? That's what I thought. The seductions of the world call to us and we follow because we really need some sort of relief. And they work for a little while, but as soon as the newness wears off, we are left with that same old gnawing in the gut. So what can we do but head out on another quest or another adventure and to find an even greater distraction? You know, we could spend our entire lives like this. People have been known to do exactly that. So there's another wonderful Old Testament story about the prophet Elijah, who went up on the mountaintop to find God. First, a great powerful hurricane blew through, but God was not in the hurricane. Then a mighty earthquake shook the whole mountain, but God was not in the earthquake. Then out of nowhere came a great fire, but God was not in the fire either. Finally, a sweet, soft wind came and gently touched Elijah's face. And immediately he was overcome and fell to the ground, for in the quiet breeze he sensed the presence of God. It's hard to feel a gentle breeze in the midst of drama, intensity, and stress, isn't it? You ever try to meditate on a roller coaster? But we love roller coasters and action movies and anything that evokes a strong emotional reaction, because strong emotional reactions demand our full attention, and therefore they make perfect distractions for a while. Unfortunately, they also hide us from ourselves and keep us from hearing the quiet voice of our own hearts that longs to tell us that we are loved and appreciated and valued. If only we could find someone out there to tell us these things, to make us feel that way. The material world is a siren song that says, come here, do this, own that, pay attention to this. And once you understand it all and have achieved it all, then you know what? You will feel worthy. For a while we believe it, but when all the running and the doing and the owning has let us down yet again, we finally know, they always will, right? And then we come face to face with a crisis. Last week I returned to the story of Jesus' baptism by John the Baptist in the River Jordan. Remember what it said in the scripture? And a light opened up in the sky, and a voice spoke and said, behold, "This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased." Keep in mind, Jesus had not yet begun his ministry. He had not performed any miracles or saved any souls. Even so, on the day of his baptism, God told him in no uncertain terms that he was deeply loved and appreciated and valued. The voice of the ego says, love must be earned. And yet, try as we might, there's never enough achievement of any kind to earn it. The great fear of not being enough, of not being lovable, drives us on and on and on until at last we realize that nothing outside of us, not even therapy or church, and certainly no other person, will ever be able to make us feel our own worth. Like the biblical pearl of great price that was buried deep in the earth, love lives inside us, waiting to be not found, but discovered. It is the presence of God dwelling like a tiny, small candle flame in the core of our being. Nothing we acquire in this world will ever supply what we so desperately need. To hear the still, small voice within that tells us that we're not only good enough, we are absolutely precious. And we are completely, utterly, totally, unconditionally loved. God within, the voice of self-love, speaks like a soft breeze and touches our hearts gently. But we won't be able to hear it and feel it until we get still. At some point, we've got to give up all our wanderings, or some of them anyway, and come home and stay there. Only then will we find out what the prodigal son did, that everything of value was always there. But then the story delivers a new twist. Look on the right side of the picture, Rembrandt's beautiful picture. The elder brother did stay home. He did all the right things. He always obeyed his father. He was always the responsible one. But guess what? He does not feel worthy either. You see, his path too was driven not by love, but by the same hole in the gut that drove his younger brother out into the far country. He thought he could get love by being good enough, and he ended up pretty much like his brother, disappointed and disillusioned. But because he had been such a good guy, you can add self-righteousness, bitterness, and jealousy to his inner turmoil. When the older son complained to his father about how unfair it was that there should be so much rejoicing when that useless kid of his younger brother, had returned home, the father said to him, "But son, you know I've always loved you. You've always been right here beside me, and everything I have is yours." But even these words couldn't soothe the elder brother because he was so lost inside his wounded ego. For him, the quest for his father's approval was no less a seduction than his brother's quest for material things. Being the good one had not satisfied his hungry and aching heart any more than his brother's wandering in the world had. He too desperately needed to come home, even though it seems to us reading the story that he never left. You see, it's the father that holds the key. He had allowed his younger son to have his money and leave without protest, even though it must have hurt his heart. He had welcomed the boy home without even asking where he'd been or how he had spent the fortune. He doesn't ask because he doesn't care. All he cares about is that his son is home. How many of us could have been that way, could be that way, with a loved one that has messed up badly with us, that has even left or abandoned us. See, this is the treasure of the story, that love is only love when it has not been earned, but freely given, no strings attached, when it has been constant and true, no matter what. The Father is the one with the peaceful heart. You can definitely see that in the painting. This is not the face of a long-suffering martyr, nor the face of one who has been vindicated by his wandering son's abject return. This is the face of a person whose face has been touched by that gentle breeze that Elijah found. We lose home every time we lose that Father inside of us. That steadfast voice of our own heart that calls us beloved, no matter how often we lose our way or doubt our worth. If only, and I include myself in that plea, we would sit still long enough and often enough to allow the presence of love to heal every dark and painful thought and memory within us. Bob Simon has a great song called Hurt People, Healed People, Heal People. Someday, someone will surely disapprove, criticize, even betray you and me. They will do this because there is a hole in their gut, and the ache in their heart has become almost unbearable. But guess what? The Father within us cannot be harmed by these things. The Father within us represents the compassion and love in our own heart. Peace comes not from finding love out there, but by being the love that we have always sought from other people. Being love is like security. It is the deep inner knowing that even when scary, painful things are happening, we are held safe in the arms of God because we are held safe in our own arms. This God love is so different from the world. It's completely outside of the paradigm of worthiness. It is unlimited, unaffected by conditions and behavior. Here's something I've had to meditate a lot on. God's love is universal. Hitler is no more outside the love of God than Mother Teresa. Bring that up to date. How do we wrap our minds around this? We're so steeped in the belief that love is conditional, so steeped in the idea that God loves and rewards the good people and judges and punishes the bad people. The voices that taught us this so early in our lives taught us that we are on this mission to prove that we are worthy of God's love and their love were well-meaning. Perhaps. Perhaps not. They were our parents and teachers and priests and rabbis and friends and employers, powerful, influential forces. They may no longer be anywhere near us, but guess what? Their voices live on. As long, though, as we stay close and connected to the presence of love within us, these voices are quite harmless. But let us become weakened by overwork or stress or loneliness or, confusion or by neglect of our spiritual life. And we can easily be pulled into that same far country that the prodigal son visited. Hurt, confused, disappointed, and disillusioned. Worst of all, feeling that there must be something we had done to deserve our misfortune. Surely I have not visited there alone. When this happens, our spiritual power is temporarily diminished. The good news is that as we grow spiritually, we remember sooner who we are. I just love that word, remember. As we put the parts back together, we remember ourselves. Like the prodigal son when he is in the pigsty in total despair, so hungry he's thinking of eating the pig slop, then suddenly comes to himself, remembers the abundance of his father's table, and makes the decision to return home. But the journey home is not without obstacles either. Shame and guilt stand between him and his father. In the story, he says to himself, I know I am not worthy any longer to be called his son, but perhaps my father will take me on as a hired servant. I can't say this to you and to myself often enough. Guilt and shame keep us in the far country. They are as far from love as resentment and hate. The Father within wants only one thing, for us to remember and come home, no matter how many times we have wandered. The Father does not judge. He feels only compassion for our painful circumstances. Look at that painting. God love is the Father's hands on the Son's shoulders. The only wagging finger is under the robe of the righteous elder brother. The other day, I came to myself about 2 hours after I was supposed to have met a dear friend for lunch. In my busyness and stress, I had completely forgotten it. But when I opened her text asking if I was okay, immediately shame and guilt descended, because I pictured her sitting alone at the table in the restaurant, feeling abandoned. Perhaps she would think I did not value her or our friendship. Of course, I apologized profusely, and here's what she wrote back. No apology needed. I had a wonderful lunch and left a $20 tip in your honor. The still small voice of God love talks like this. No drama, no blame. The friend did not feel diminished by my mistake because she didn't take it personally. Guilt had caused me to suffer. God love had kept my friend secure and happy. One final time, let's take a look at the painting and see how the light, this is such a bad rendition, but I've seen the original. And see how the light illuminates the Father's love for his Son. Most people think that the theme of the story is forgiveness, yet the Father did not need to forgive his Son because he had never judged him. Rather, there was only forgiveness of the past, and in that picture we see that for the Father, the past is completely gone. Looking at this masterpiece, our attention is riveted by the power of this one single moment when love is all there is. So powerful, it lights up the room. It takes your attention completely away from everything else. Rembrandt paints everything else into the background, you see? Love, this powerful, completely obliterates the past and the future. What wrongdoing? There is no wrongdoing. What search? There's nothing to search for. Spiritual homecomings are like this. Anytime, anywhere, we can just go to that quiet place within where there are no loud, seductive, judgmental voices and wait, as Elijah did, for the earthquakes and the hurricane to pass by, to refuse to move, to wait until we can feel that soft breeze caressing our cheek. God bless you all. So now nothing to think about, no plans to make. Just take a nice deep breath. And allow that stillness to fall upon your mind, heart. And as you pay attention to the breath, notice how that stillness spreads throughout your body. The tremendous power of the breath. That soft breeze. And as we breathe out, we can imagine that we're bringing this breath of life and love out into this room, and imagine it touching the cheeks of those so many that we love in this place today. In this season of Advent, we're asked to pause in the midst of all this chaotic running around and be aware that the Christ love is being reborn in us this season. Wherever we may have been, however the world's chaos has drawn us out of our hearts, we return. And we find it just as we left it. This inner flame is as true and steady and present as it always was. As we enter into the silence this morning, I invite you to take with you one simple mantra. I am love. I am love. In the silence. So grateful for this season of Advent, this time of preparation and refocusing. All these things in the world swirl about us, and yet we have this opportunity to return to this idea that Christ's love is being reborn in us this season. this is the time where we find that love that we've been seeking out there. When we finally know that it is as close and constant as our own breath. And when we know this, you and I, each one of us, will become the world's greatest Christmas gift. And so it is. Amen.